I don't know what all my connections are or who I've influenced. I can talk about people who have said something or that stuck with me and that kind of changed my perspective. And maybe I've said something at some point in time that stuck with a kid or a student or an athlete or one of my kids or something, that as we keep making those connections, it's just knowing that you're not alone, that you're in a community.
Welcome to the Dandelion Effect podcast, a space for organic conversation about the magic of living a connected life. Just like the natural world around us, we are all linked through an intricate web, a never-ending ripple that spans across the globe. Here, we explore the ideas that our guests carry through the world, remember who and what inspired them along the way, and uncover the seeds that help them blossom into their unique version of this human experience. This podcast is a production of the Feathered Pipe Foundation, whose mission is to help people find their direction through access to programs and experiences that support healing, education, community, and empowerment. If you've been listening to this podcast, you undoubtedly know that the Feathered Pipe Ranch is a very special place to visit, to work, to study, to teach, to be human. Many of our podcast guests have long-standing relationships with the center and its people, and their perspective on its magic is different than that of, say, someone who is visiting for the first time. Today's guest, Tim Sloffer, happened upon the ranch last year while he was applying for a Lilly Teacher Creativity Grant from the Lilly Endowment, a program that began in 1987 as a way to help Indiana elementary and secondary educators renew their commitment to teaching. To give you an idea of the scope of this program, the foundation awarded 103 grants, each totaling $12,000 in 2022. And what's amazing about this program is that teachers can apply to be covered for all kinds of experiences that will enhance their understanding of themselves and the world at large. Studying foreign language, natural resources, photography, chess, quilting, zoology, the list is endless. If you can write it up to show that it will expand and improve you as a person and as a teacher, it's considered. So with zero background in yoga, but a desire to learn how to take better care of himself, Tim Googled wellness retreats and found the Feathered Pipe Ranch. And after looking through the summer schedule, he realized that he could spend 5 weeks participating in 5 totally different workshops that covered wellness from many angles. So the grant was written, and he was awarded $12,000 to come to the Feathered Pipe Ranch for 5 weeks. In this conversation, we explore Tim's upbringing in the small town of Huntertown, Indiana, the road that led him to following in his mom's footsteps as a teacher, his journey through college as a teen parent, and the challenges and joys of raising 3 kids. He reflects on his time at the ranch, what he learned from each retreat, the growth moments that invited him out of his comfort zone, and the ways that he settled into the rhythm of life as a long-termer here. On Tim's last night, we presented him with a cake and celebrated the time he spent with us on Bear Creek Road, and today we get a window into how the lessons of last summer have trickled into his everyday life. I'm Andy Van Treese, and you're listening to another episode of the Dandelion Effect podcast with our special guest and friend, Tim Sloffer. Part of one of the things that I can't get enough of is just finding out how people became who they are today. Like, the Tim that I met last summer, like, right. How is it that you came to be this person and all of the things that happened along the way? I know you're from Huntertown, Indiana, which is not far from where Eric Myers grew up. So you have the Midwest connection there. But just tell me a little bit about your upbringing, your childhood.
Like you said, I grew up in Huntertown, Indiana. Mom's a teacher, dad's a farmer. I've got an older brother and an older sister. We were part of the United Methodist Church. And I have good memories of all of that. And I think those are big things that shaped me growing up. The church and my family and wrestling. I started wrestling in like the 1st grade. So my mom taught, and a lot of times I would go to school with her, or since my dad farmed, which was really nice, he kind of had his own schedule, so sometimes he would drive me to school so I didn't have to ride the bus some days, or there was a restaurant across the street from the school I forget the real name of it, but everybody called it Sweaty Betty's.
That was just a restaurant's nickname?
So yeah, and it was basically a gas station right across the street from the school. And so when I was little, I'd go to Sweaty Betty's with my dad before school, and I'd get a cheeseburger and a Coke. So I'd always want to look at the sports page and look up how many points did Michael Jordan have the night before. Like, I was really interested in that. And then a lot of the local farmers are sitting there. Mom could always tell, though, when I went to Sweaty Betty's with Dad in the morning, because then I'd walk over to school. I'd walk across the street to her classroom and wait for the day or whatever. But I'd smell like smoke.
Yeah.
That's kind of the small town that I grew up in. Now, since then, it's really grown. It's more of a suburb of Fort Wayne. It's kind of hard to tell where, Fort Wayne ends and Huntertown begins, I guess.
Did you grow up working on the farm with your dad?
A little bit, but I'm probably like the worst farm kid ever. Like, I could drive a tractor, but I was always tiny too. I was a tiny rat. I had chores and things, but some of the bigger farm jobs, I guess my brother probably maybe did a little bit more of that. And Dad would give me a job, and then, he'd get busy and doing something, and I'd kind of sneak off, and then he'd find me and I'd be shooting baskets or playing some other game or whatever. And he'd be like, hey, what are you doing? A lot of times my job was just hold the light. Like, I'd get a flashlight or something. I'd have to hold the light exactly where my dad wanted me to hold. And that's it. I'd stand there forever. And so I'd like try to find ways to like put the light where he wanted it, and then like sneak off without him noticing. And then I'd be shooting hoops, and then I'd hear him yell because he needed the light moved or whatever. And it's funny because I live next door to my dad still. Sometimes he needs help with something or whatever. And that is still the job that I have. Like, hold this light. And I'm just like right there holding. And my oldest son sometimes helps him too. And it's the same thing. It's like, it's probably why I need my dad to do everything, because I never actually learned how to do any of this stuff. Like, my dad can fix anything, just being a farmer. We didn't have like all the nice equipment or whatever. It was, he fixed his own stuff. He keep it going or whatever. And so he's pretty competent in a lot of areas of being a handy person. We did a lot of fixing up when we moved into the little house next to the farm where my dad is. And I'd tell people, oh yeah, we're fixing this up. We're doing this, we're doing that. But when I say we are fixing it up, it's okay, my dad's fixing it up and I'm like handing him the tool.
You're holding the light. That's really funny. What were some of the other things that you remember escaping to go do? Or what were your curiosities? What were your hobbies?
At one point, we had a computer, like an old like Commodore 64 type. I remember kind of being fascinated with that and thinking that was pretty cool. Or our family was really into movies. We had this like disc drive, and you'd put in these like giant discs. And I think we had like 4 movies, like Star Wars, I think was one. And so I like books and movies. And I know at some point there was a Nintendo. My brother and I would, fight over who got to play the Nintendo or whatever. And we had BB guns, so we got in a lot of trouble with our BB guns. I think we shot out every window in the barn one year, and we lost the BB guns after that.
Yeah, when you start self-destructing on the farm, I'm sure Dad's not too happy. Just from talking with Eric about his childhood growing up nearby, it seemed like there's almost an expectation for boys to follow in the footsteps of their fathers as farmers. And just from what he has told me, like, it can be a little bit hard to deviate from that route. Was that an experience that you had at all?
Not really at all. I almost felt like, if you asked my dad, he would just laugh like I was going to be the farmer. Like, I just don't know if that's in my skill set. And I don't know that my brother was ever that interested in it either. And I don't think there was much of a pressure to do that. So my dad retired from farming just this past year, and the neighbor boys farm it, right? They're farmers, and they cash rent and farm the ground. So it's not like it's going to waste or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad to hear that. I feel like, sometimes whatever profession it is or whatever lifestyle it is, kids can kind of get stuck in expectations to follow in certain footsteps. But it sounds like you were given free rein to be who you were and have that nurtured and nourished. What role did your mom being a teacher, or what role did your mom play? Having parents as teachers is a really interesting thing.
Yeah.
They seem to have an understanding of different ways to learn and kind of nurturing people's innate talents.
Yeah. She was an encourager, probably my biggest fan. I mentioned books, like she'd always get us lots to read. And I think there was some pressure to do well in school, like especially in elementary, because, mom's a teacher or whatever. But my elementary class, like the group of us, I think there were 4 or 5 of us who had moms who taught in the school, which I never thought was that big of a deal until later on when I became a teacher and started talking to some of the teachers who were there when we were there. And they were like, oh, your class was, that was something else. And we were just very comfortable in the school. But I always liked having my mom in the building. I can remember like you'd have to get things signed by a parent. And if you didn't turn it in on time or whatever, you'd have to sit on the wall or something for 5 minutes or whatever. And I'd always forget, but I'd never got in trouble because I'd be like, oh, I got to go to the bathroom. And I'd grab that paper and I'd sprint up to my mom's classroom, like up the steps, like, Mom, I need you to sign this real quick. And she'd sign it and I'd sprint back down and I'd, turn it back in. And
act like you had it all under control. That's a good advantage. I never would have even thought about that.
Yeah. I remember doing that a lot as a kid, actually.
I really appreciate these conversations as a chance to reflect, kind of like looking back and looking at the events, the moments, the people that shaped you and had a big impact. Your mom passing when you were in high school being, of course, a extremely pivotal moment in your life. When you look back on that age and that happening, what comes to mind and how did things unfold for you and your family in that time?
So obviously a really difficult time and probably the first time in my life that I dealt with like a really adverse kind of thing, like up until that point in my life, it was like, oh, I lost a wrestling match or, oh, this happened. I don't think I knew how to deal with that, but I lived in a small community. My mom was this beloved person in our church family and in the school family and just in the town and the community. And I think as I look back on that, I just think that as much as I screwed up after that point and like learning to deal with grief and all those things as a kid or whatever, I was surrounded by so many people that were looking out for me and doing things that were helpful and kind, sometimes without me even realizing it at the time. There's a lady from our church who would just like randomly show up with a card or some cookies or something, but always a stick of carefree gum, and then like a little positive message or something. And a lot of people in our community that were just really kind to us and just kind of helping. And
you were 16, you said?
I would have been 16. Yeah, I was a sophomore. So it's been like over 26 years and I still have a hard time. It's still not an easy thing to talk about, which is crazy to think about. But
I don't know how it ever gets much easier. It's your mom.
And I'll still have people to this day who will come up and tell me a story. Like when I was teaching, I remember one time a teacher coming up and saying, you know what? One thing your mom told me one time, about what she does. And it was something about when she has a really tough kid or a kid that's just having a really hard time. Like she said that she would just go and sit in their desk and just try to see from their perspective and pray and that kind of thing. And just kind of thinking about that kid. And she said, that just really helped me to trying to see the kid as a kid and not just this student that's not turning in their homework or the student that's, acting out or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's part of what made people love her as a teacher. Actually, my brother, it was just within the last month, I think, he said that he was out walking his dog and a guy came up to him and said, your mom was my teacher. He was a kid that got in trouble a lot and he had kind of had a rough time in school up to that point. And he said that he started wearing glasses to school and doing a lot better and was doing well. So mom called just to talk to the family and say, hey, he's really doing a great job and making that a positive phone call home, because sometimes we just call home when things are bad. So it's nice to make that positive phone call home. And I think that's maybe what she was doing. But she said that, ever since he got his glasses, I've really seen an improvement. Well, the parents said, what glasses? Like, the kid didn't have glasses. He had taken some shop glasses from his dad's garage, but he put those on. And when he wore his glasses, he was like I'm the good kid now. And
Wow.
I don't even know if that's necessarily a story of anything that my mom did there. I just got a kick out of it. It happens probably a few times a year where somebody says, hey, I have this memory of your mom or something that she did, which is pretty cool. And the elementary school where she taught, there's a big bookcase in the library that's kind of dedicated to her memory. I mean, it's been so long that a lot of people may not remember, but it's neat that that's in there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you're 16 when your mom passes, but she was fighting cancer for a year and a half.
Right.
And then your sister was off to college, and then your brother was off to college. And all of a sudden this household of 5 was down to just you and your dad.
Right.
For your last 2 years of high school. And then you meet your wife senior year of high school, and a baby comes really soon, and marriage comes really soon. And so like all of these things, it's such a classic example of just, everything happening at once.
Right.
So take me back to maybe that senior year of high school. I'm curious to hear the story of how you met your wife, and then, I also want to talk a bit about you having your first son and going through college and all of that.
Gosh, I got with a group of buddies my senior year, and we decided we're going to, on our own, fly to Florida for spring break. And that's what we did. And I remember my dad being like a little skeptical, like, I don't know if this is a good idea, but we went, and then had a good time, probably too good.
Yeah.
But so one of my buddies that was in that group, his girlfriend, who is now his wife, was doing the same thing. They had a group of friends, and they all flew down for spring break too. And like, we were kind of close to our group and their group, and we probably hung out a lot that week. And then, so I met my wife through his girlfriend's set of friends or whatever. And so we met each other and hit it off, and after spring break, kept in touch, and then started dating. And then
she was from your town, or
she went to a different high school in Fort Wayne. Okay. But she lived 10 minutes away. It wasn't like it was a far away school or anything. Mm-hmm. So I think we went to both of our proms, that summer she was pregnant. And so that was a big, obviously a huge life moment. And so I had planned to go to University of Indianapolis. I ended up going for one semester. Jasmine would come down and visit me because UIndy was like an hour and a half to 2 hours away from us. And, so we still see each other quite a bit. And then Travis was due in February. So I came home for that winter break, and I was like, you know what, I think I'm just going to stay here. And I went to IPFW's, an Indiana Purdue campus in Fort Wayne. When Travis was first born, we lived with my wife's mom for a little bit because her mom helped while Travis was little, just a baby there. And then we lived at her dad's for a little while, which was a little closer to where I lived in Huntertown. And then, we got married in May of that year, and then moved into a little place in Fort Wayne.
Okay.
I did school. Jasmine didn't do school right away. She would take like a class at a time, and she wasn't really sure what she wanted to do yet anyway. So she kind of would get all of the basic classes out of the way. And then she served at Don Pablo's restaurant in Fort Wayne. She was a server at Don Pablo's. And then I did school full-time at IPFW. For a little while, I worked at a furniture store in the mall. Mm-hmm. And that was a weird job because nobody really goes to the mall to buy furniture. So I would work in the evening, and I'd be the only one there, so I could get all my studying done and do all that. But every now and then I'd sell a couch and I'd just sell it off the floor. So I'd be the only one in there. So I'd have to I'd wrap it, and then I'd put it on like a cart, and then I'd have to carry it out like through the back of the mall and like wheel it down. And I'd load the couch up for him. Or we had a pretty cool guy, I forget his name, but he was a pretty handy guy, and he did most of our deliveries and stuff. So occasionally I'd go with him on deliveries. It was kind of a small family business, and occasionally the lady that owned the business would just have me, she'd be like, oh, I need you to go mow my lawn today. And so I'd go mow her lawn, and it was an interesting.
Yeah. Like all the things that you do in phases of life like that to just make it happen. We have this new baby. I'm in college. Somehow I have to make money and study and be there for my family. You being from such a close-knit community, everybody knowing your parents, and I'm sure your grandparents, and now knowing you and your new wife, How did the community show up for you at that time? Did it feel like it was that village around raising a kid?
So we stayed active in the church that I grew up in for a pretty long time. Everyone there was wonderful. You know, Jasmine was in mom's groups and things like that. And just, I don't know if it was a big scandalous thing in a small town or whatever, but it never really felt that way. Mm-hmm. I think we were loved and supported and all those things. Lots of support from the community and you know, obviously family and everyone. So that was good. But I was going to say, after the furniture job, Wells Fargo at the time had a phone like call-in center. And so it was like a 24-hour call center. So I'm like hearing about this job, and it was like, at the time it was really good pay, and it included like full benefits. So I heard they were hiring and that there was a new class of hires starting, and I had kind of gotten my name in the job pool, but I wasn't in this first class of hires. And a friend of mine who had kind of known about the job said that they were starting this class on like whatever Monday. So I just showed up. And I said, hey, I've gone through the process. I've been accepted or whatever, but I don't think I'm not supposed to be in this class, but is there any way I could just start with this group today? And the guy laughed, because at the time, apparently there were some other call centers that were having a hard time getting workers. And he's like, and we just had people just showing up. And that was huge for our family, because it had health benefits, and I got like 30 hours. Since it was a 24-hour call center, I was able to work like 4 to 10, 5 nights a week.
Yeah.
It was really a good gig. So once I finally got an actual teaching job, then my wife started going to school, taking a few more classes at a time, and then timed it. She's a teacher now too. She teaches middle school social studies, but she timed it to do her student teaching when our youngest son, Ben, right when he was like ready for kindergarten, she was doing her student teaching. And then when he actually started school full time was when she got her first actual teaching job. So.
Okay. You guys have 3 kids that are they're what, 3 years apart?
Travis is 23. Olivia's 19, but she'll be 20 in May. And Ben is 17 and he'll be 18 in July.
Okay. What's been the most unexpected joy of being a parent?
When I was younger as a parent, I was always self-conscious or just like very aware of the fact that we were really young parents, and like always felt like I had to prove that we're going to be good parents, you know, and like if my kid's the one screaming in the cart at Walmart or whatever, I'd feel that kind of intensely, like, and because people would look at you like, oh, well, of course, we were babies ourselves, you know, that's my kid, you know, but nobody ever said anything like that to me, but I feel like I felt that for some reason. And it was probably just more my own internalizing that, but we started from maybe not the ideal plan that people would typically have, but seeing that our kids have been successful and that they're finding things that they enjoy and they're getting a lot out of the lives that they have. And it's nice to see.
Yeah, I'm sure massive challenges along the way, but you guys have raised 3 amazing kids and everybody's doing well. So it's certainly something to be proud of.
Yeah. And Travis, my oldest Travis, he was not like a pleaser. For him to be our first was tough, because he had a hard time in elementary school. You know, he would just escape into books. I remember asking him about his school day. Well, how was your school day? And he's like, oh, it was fine. Well, what'd you learn? Oh, nothing. Or, well, what did you do? Oh, I read this entire book. And it would be like he would have read, like in 2nd grade, he would have read like an entire Harry Potter book in one day. And I'm like, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing in school, I don't know that you should get that much. He's like, oh, it's fine, you know. And then like I remember having conferences with his teachers, and just the reading was became a problem for him. Like it was one of his biggest strengths, but also a problem. Like the teacher would literally like threaten to throw his book out the window. I mean, he was content to be in his desk with a book all day, but if you engaged him in conversation, you could never be quite sure what he was going to say to you. You might not like it. And then our youngest, Ben, he's easygoing, and he doesn't particularly care a lot about school, but he does well enough. And he's trying to be a professional paintball player. That's his goal right now, and which I always thought was kind of bizarre, but it actually has opened some doors. Like he's been traveling all over and doing things because of this. It's neat to see. And all my kids have traveled. It's funny because I think I've mentioned this to you before. 90% of my life, I live in a 4-mile radius of my home. Like my school's about, I guess it's about 6 miles away. most of what we do is either at my dad's house or my sister's house right next door, or, just in Huntertown and that kind of thing. But my kids have all, traveled a little bit. Travis did a study abroad. He actually went to his undergrad in Grinnell in Iowa, a little liberal arts school in Iowa. And one of the reasons he chose that was they had a high percentage of students that do study abroad. So he did a study abroad where he was in Copenhagen. In Europe, I guess it's really easy just to jump around country to country once you're there. And so he did all of that. Now, unfortunately, it was right when COVID hit, 2020. So it got cut short. He had to come home then. And then my daughter, she was a high-level futsal player, which is like, she played soccer as well. She was a goalkeeper, but futsal was her favorite. It's like this indoor with like a little bit harder of a ball on like a basketball court. It's 5-on-5, I think. And she played futsal at a really high level and got to play with a national team and went to like Costa Rica and Argentina. And she got to do some trips like that because of that. And so she did that travel. And now Ben with his paintball, he was supposed to go to Paris, but that got canceled for COVID with a national team. But He did get to go to Guadalajara, Mexico for a paintball tournament. And then he's got a couple of teams he plays for where they travel quite a bit. And my wife usually goes with them. My wife likes to go with them on some of those trips, but I'm usually more content just to stay home.
It's really funny for me to hear that you have a 6-mile radius and 90% of your time is spent at home, because I met you on this like extravagant epic adventure to Montana that you had last year.
Right.
I want to hear about what your internal process was of choosing to spend this grant opportunity that you had gotten, choosing to spend it at a place like the Feather Pipe Ranch. Can you tell me what type of opportunity you were looking for and how you happened upon it?
It's a Lilly Teacher Creativity Grant. It's for Indiana teachers, and you can read about the things that people are doing, and they're all so different.
Okay.
There's a lot of cool things that they're funding and making possible. I knew that I wanted to write a grant for the Lilly thing. And a lot of times what I'll do is I just start thinking about what's something that I would like to do that I would never do on my own unless
it's paid for.
yeah, basically. And so I was thinking about things, and I started thinking about things that I enjoy. At one point I was like, maybe I'll do something with pickleball. Like I get these like weird random things. I'm like, how can I make pickleball sound exciting? And like, then with COVID and everything and just being stuck indoors, and I just started feeling like blah, and I kind of was reading about yoga and wellness and those kinds of things, because as a wrestling coach I dealt with some things where I used to kind of, especially when my oldest son Travis wrestled, I would kind of wrestle around with him in the room, and I was his coach his senior year. I'd been less able to do that just because of aches and pains and just back issues and things like that. And I like I said, athletics was kind of a big part of my life, and I felt like I was losing some functionality and mobility and things. And it was, I don't know, it's kind of disappointing, right? When you're growing old and you can't enjoy physically some of the things that have been a big part of your life to that point. And I've been able to find other things that I enjoy that are less physical than, wrestling or something like that. So I was just trying to think of ways to figure out this body, and Googling things like wellness retreats and yoga retreats and outdoors, scenic places, all that stuff. And a lot of different places pop up. But when the Feather Pipe popped up, I was like, ooh, this one looks kind of neat, and I'm reading about it. And then I look at the retreats. I realize, oh, this isn't just like one thing. Like, this is just like a place that's hosting, and all these other people in their field are presenting. And when you write a grant, or at least for me, when I write a Lilly grant, I'm trying to think of something that I can sustain. It's not meant to be like a 1-week thing or like a weekend vacation or something like that. It's supposed to be a big deal, like a life-changing experience, and it should take a lot of time and have a lot to it. So as I thought about maybe going to some different places, like, oh, maybe a yoga retreat here and one over here. But then I got to the Feathered Pipe website and kind of was reading about it. I'm like, boy, I think I could write this in a way that shows that I'm going to see all aspects of wellness, and I'm going to be surrounded by just this beautiful scenic place, and just have this one spot can hit the whole thing. which also is nice because then able to make it last even longer because you're not paying for multiple flights and things like that, right? You're there in one place. So I started putting that together and reading about it and looking at the schedule, and I found this 5-week time frame that worked for me.
Tell me about the 5 programs that you participated in and kind of lay out maybe some experiences that you had at each one and just what you learned from them.
I think I started with functional medicine, which was awesome. I mean, it was like, I think if I'm looking back, like as far as like actual changes in my lifestyle that I've made, that one included some blood work that I did ahead of time and then sat down with Dr. Lamb and Dr. Stone and talked about some things, but he gave me some advice on like some supplements or vitamins and things that might be helpful and small nutritional things I've applied.
Great.
I think they're making a difference. I haven't done new blood work again since then, but that was a neat way to start. And I was actually, I think, their first time doing that one.
It was.
I mean, all the groups, they're all so unique and interesting. And I kind of learned that as I was there, just like the flow of a week and how it goes with the guests. And, you know, there's like that feeling out period. And then there's the time to explore the ranch and maybe an activity or something like that, where you go out and do something. And then by the end of the week, everybody's just in tears because they're going to miss everybody so much. And it's keep going through that flow over and over again with.
Yeah. You were probably on an emotional roller coaster, making all these new friends, and then they leave and you're still there, and then more friends, and then they leave and you're still there. That's how we feel as staff.
There were a lot of discussions that were like, intense things, dealing with trauma and things like that and how that presents in the body. And it was neat stuff to talk about and to learn about. And then I did the Iyengar yoga with Marla app. That was the next one. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have a lot of yoga experience, but that was very different than any experience I'd ever had with yoga. I really liked it, but it was so intense. And it was like 2 sessions a day, and each session was like multiple hours, and you're just, I remember towards the end of the week, like going to that evening session, just thinking, I don't know if I can do it again, but that's about the time they'd let you do like a restorative pose or something. So you can kind of rest up. And I think that's the week that Heidi told me, you don't have to do it all. Like you can, it's okay. That's probably the other biggest thing that I've taken away, was when Heidi brought that point home with me about just listening to your body. You don't have to push. And in fact, that was kind of a big thing about yoga. Like it's okay to, to challenge yourself or whatever, but you don't have to push. Mm-hmm. Sort of my experience with athletics and the physical aspect of my life has always been about push harder, you know what I mean? And I think that's kind of been what probably has gotten me to the point where, I do deal with some injuries and things like that, because it's always like, oh, you just got to push harder.
That's such a mainstream narrative too. Like anybody coming from an athletic background usually has been taught that mindset of like, no pain, no gain, push through it. It's such an interesting dynamic because your body is the vehicle with which you're doing the sport. Yeah. But you're almost told to not listen to it.
Right.
I mean, that's such great advice from Heidi, and that type of advice from yoga teachers for me in my experience with yoga is always really helpful too, because I think it even helps those of us who are people pleasers or like want to be the good student.
Right.
There's even part of it where it's like, if the teacher's saying something, if a coach is telling you to do something, or, somebody who is in some form of authority, if they're telling you to do something, I'm going to like try my best to do the things. Right. And with yoga, that same thing that happened to you also happened to me, where I just started to actually be taught to listen to myself. And that has been a practice that has really helped me in a lot of other areas of life, not even just with the physical side of things, definitely that, but also the ways that I go, well, where am I not listening to my body, and where am I not listening to myself in other parts of life?
Right. And just being able to communicate what I'm experiencing too, because Marla, and she was amazing, because she'd be like, well, like this is an exaggeration, obviously, but she'd be like, well, just kind of move your fourth rib to the, like she described in such great detail this. And I can't imagine even having that kind of body awareness and control, but I could, try to describe to her what was going on. And she would always have the right prop or the right thing to help me get the most out of stuff. I remember after that week just feeling like that made a difference in my, all of a sudden I'm walking with my shoulders back. It was good. I enjoyed that yoga, but I also enjoyed knowing that, you know what, I can rest some, or I can sit some poses out, or I could, that kind of thing too.
Right. And that's okay. It's more than okay. It's like what teachers want students to do is to be in tune enough to know exactly what you need.
Yeah.
And to ask for it. Even that communication is so interesting too. Like having that relationship with a teacher, just to be able to say, hey, this is what's going on with me. Like, do you have any advice? And also, you are totally in control of what you do.
Right.
So you did functional medicine, you did Marla, the Iyengar, then you did Nat Kendall, so the Bhakti yoga. What was that experience like for you?
If I'm being honest, that was the one I was a little most wary of because when I read about it, it was like, they're going to do chanting. And I remember when I first got the notification that I'd received the grant, and I was kind of sharing the idea with some of my students. This was when I was teaching seniors, and one girl in the class, she's like, I'm going to look this place up, Mr. Sloffer. And she was looking it up, and she goes, I don't know about this place, Mr. Sloffer. And she's like, there are 0 negative reviews of this place. Like, well, that's good, isn't it? And all the kids start shaking their hand. They're like, no, that's not good. There should be at least one person. And they're all worried that, is this some kind of cult, Mr. Sloffer? Are you going to come back to us? And it's different to them. And to me too, these aren't things that I've really experienced a lot of before. And
did it feel like a religious thing, or?
I just wasn't sure what to expect, but I was so pleasantly surprised with the whole experience. Like it was awesome. And we would do a session in the morning, and then he would end that with doing and I'm probably going to say this wrong, but doing the Hanuman
Chalisa.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And he would do that. And I just remember just sitting there on that yoga deck, and then, the mountains and the lake and everything right there. And he's just playing that, and it's beautiful. And he did it every morning. And I think I stayed for it every single time, because I'm like, this is something I'm going to miss. And so I wanted to hear that. And I've looked for recordings of that, but none of them sound like Nat. I found maybe one recording of him doing it. I really enjoyed that.
He's incredible.
But then also, so one of the first sessions, we've kind of done our thing, and he's starting to do the kind of the back and forth chant. I didn't feel like it was a religious thing, but it did remind me of like when I'm a kid at like church camp or Bible study, whatever, where, singing and the kids singing back and forth. It didn't feel that unfamiliar to me. We're sitting there, and the music's cool, and there's, and everybody's kind of vibing or whatever to it. And it's neat. And then I'm barely able to pick up like exactly what to say or whatever. And he'll do one, and then he'll look at somebody in the group. All of a sudden that means, oh, they're going to do a solo with him next. Like they're going to sing that back to him. And I'm just like, oh boy. And then next thing you know, he's looking right at me, and I'm like, oh, this is going to happen. Like I'm going to sing back. And that happened, and I got through it, and I was like, you know what, that wasn't so bad. Like I can handle this. So, but that was totally out of my comfort zone. Like
I always close my eyes when that starts to happen. If I can't see him pointing at me,
then he can't expect me to do it.
Because it is nerve-wracking, but it's also like really liberating.
And I was there to get out of my comfort zone and learn new things. And it was, there was a good connection with the group. Nobody was like, oh my gosh, that was awful. We won't call on him again. Like it never felt like that. Everybody's uplifting and kind, and it was cool. I really enjoyed it. And something that I was kind of a little bit weary of, or I don't know if afraid of is the right word, but something that I just wasn't sure about, it ended up being one of my favorite things. So the next week with Mindful Unplug, like the drum circle and that was awesome. That was, everybody's connecting, and all the groups are fun, but that group, it felt to me like they were all old friends. Like there were a lot of them had been coming to this particular experience multiple times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of regulars in that group.
Right. They kind of took me in, and Donna and Diane, I think, if they listen, hello. I miss those ladies. They were a lot of fun, and they kind of took me in. Although I told myself I wasn't going to try to say a lot of names, because I just I don't want to like forget somebody, and I met so many people. And
what was it like for you socially? I mean, although there's only one retreat at a time at the ranch and it's not a huge place, it's still, 20 to 30 new people each time. And I know for me, I have to get in a pretty good rhythm with when is social time, when do I have my me time, when can I decompress after I do my story mapping sessions, things like that. Because when you're there for a week, you can kind of say yes to everything. Yes, I'm going to go for this hike to see the sunset, or yes, I'm going to stay up and drink wine all night with these people. And it's just a week, so you can just do whatever you want. But when you're there long enough to settle in, it becomes a little bit of a different rhythm and a different balance.
Yeah. I remember when I first told my brother I was doing this trip and kind of explaining how it was going to work. And he's like, you're going to meet a lot of people. And I didn't think about that, but it was definitely a part of it, just meeting so many new people and telling them about, oh yeah, I'm here because of a grant. Yeah, I'm the guy that's been here for 5 weeks, and just kind of retelling that over and over again. But I'm not like a super social person either. Like not only is my radius small, but like I have, a few friends that I like to hang out with on a regular basis, but it's mostly family. And I think I'm introverted in that I get my energy a lot from kind of downtime. And even with so many people, there's still so many opportunities for solitude on the ranch because it's so big. And if you want to kind of go off on your own, you can go off on your own and find your time. But I almost feel guilty now because I feel like I made all these great friends. I'm not one for keeping in contact or writing, or I don't do Facebook or any of that stuff. So it's not like I've really kept in contact with anybody. But I think by the end, I kind of felt like I was part of the actual ranch and not one of the guests. Like I felt like hanging out with Sam in the kitchen, or I'd ride with Sam to pick up vegetables or whatever he'd ordered that week, or we'd meet the guy in the truck at the bottom of the hill or whatever. Or I'd ride into town with Matt and Howard and get Howard a case for his phone, or, that kind of thing. And it was,
you totally became part of the core crew.
Because those were the people that stayed the whole time. So it was like playing tag or ball or whatever it was with, whatever Zia was interested in at the time, she being able to see her energy and her interactions at the ranch, and just a lot of special things going on,
Yeah. And for those listening, Zia is a 3-year-old, two or 3-year-old Crystal's daughter. You became her best friend last summer.
Well, it just depended on the week, because I know one week there was a mother and daughter there, and the.
Oh yeah, Zia loved that girl. She didn't care about any of us that week. She was over us. She had a new friend. You ended with Judith. What was that last week? Did that kind of wrap things up for you in a good way?
Yeah, it did, because I love just laying there. And I know that's not what I'm pretty sure I snored a few times so I wasn't necessarily doing it right, but it was just, just the different positions that she would have you kind of relax in, and just kind of, I liked that, especially after some of the more intense stuff that we'd done.
Yeah, I love restorative.
Now, I will say, as I was getting closer and closer to the end, I was getting a little more homesick and a little more like, oh, I think I'm ready to go, but not wanting to rob myself of the moment in Montana either, right? I want to be present and, at the ranch while I'm there, but also I can feel my mind wandering to, okay, I'm ready to be home. I'm ready to see the family. Oh yeah, school starts next week. I mean, I feel like a lot of that restorative stuff was just the breathing and the meditation. And to me, those are good ways to deal with stress and that kind of thing. So I think I mentioned this to you the other day so I can't remember if I came home on a Friday or a Saturday, but I think it was a Saturday. And then that Monday was my first work day. There weren't kids at school yet, but it was a work day. And I think that Tuesday was the first day of school. And I was on a new assignment this year. I went from teaching in the 10-12 side with mostly juniors and seniors to a new assignment with freshmen only. And I was in a new room, and I hadn't set anything up in my new room yet. And my technology wasn't working that first day when I'm trying to get everything ready. And I lost it. I swear I lost it on that Monday. And I kind of snipped at one of our technology guys, and he's a great guy and he's super helpful. And I went and I walked down later and apologized to him, and just kind of in thinking about it, I'm just like, you got to remember how to deal with stress. You spent 5 weeks in a place where it's just like, everything is wonderful, and there aren't a lot of stressors on the ranch, when you're a guest on the ranch, everything's taken care of, from food to whatever you feel like doing, It was a rip that Band-Aid off and jump right in kind of thing, so.
Yeah. Give yourself one day to acclimate. Any kind of retreat like that, it's allowing your nervous system to shift into that ability to relax is really important for your body to do all of the healing internally that needs to happen when you can sleep well and eat well and not have that stress. But then we go back to life, we go back to our jobs and our families and the responsibilities and the duties that we have and the stresses of regular life. So a huge part of what we talk about when retreating is the integration back into whatever your current reality and schedule is. So I want to ask, what have been some of the big takeaways for you, or what have been some of the lessons that you've been able to apply from all of those really different workshops to your life? How has that showed up in the last 6 months?
One of the big ones is just, I think I listen to my body better now. Since then, I've been getting back into my exercise routine or my wellness routine. And I think I'm more gentle with my body than I'm not pushing as hard, but I also feel like I'm getting better results because I'm focused on things like rest and recovery and eating better things and making sure my sleep is good. And as far as in the teaching aspect, I think one of the things that I can take from this and kind of have a little bit, but I think there's more to explore with it, is the idea of that whole mindful unplug thing and sharing that more with my students about just how empowering and how healthy it is to turn stuff off and be present. One of the mindful unplug books that Thich Nhat Hanh, they gave us a little book of his, and then he was mentioned on the book list. And I just made a poster. It's up in my room, and it was just a quote from him. And I don't even know if I'm sure the quote is a translation, so I don't know if it's the best one. But so I just have this poster in my room that says, "Breathing in, I calm body and mind. Breathing out, I smile. Dwelling in the present moment, I know this is the only moment." And that was a quote from one of the things that I read. And so I keep that up.
You have that up in your classroom?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I actually have it up twice in my classroom. I have it up as a poster, but I also have it attached right to my desk at my computer, where I just see it, just kind of reminding myself that be in the moment, be present for not only for yourself, but for your students, available to what the moment, I guess, has for you.
The tagline of our podcast is the magic of living a connected life. And I'm curious of what that means to you, or when you think about yourself living a connected life or being connected, what does that feel like? What comes up?
I think that's important, an important thing for me to think about, because I can sometimes isolate and live within myself, but I feel so much more fulfilled when I'm pushing myself to connect. Obviously, my connections with my family, super important to me. As the kids kind of start to grow older to that point where they're starting to leave, thinking about, well, I hope those connections are strong enough that our relationships stay strong, and that, you keep getting to hear from them, because my connections with my family are probably my most important connections. And that was a huge thing. I think I realized that the ranch is just so many people with so many different perspectives and so many different, thoughts on life and everything, but everyone's so kind and interesting and so much to share. And so I think if you were blocking some of those connections, you're just missing out. And I think sometimes I might miss out on some things because I was unwilling to get out there and, I guess, make connections. So something Howard said that maybe India used to say about ripples or something, where, people would come. The hope was that, that they're going to gain something from that experience. And then you don't know what ripples they're going to have as they go out. And I don't know what all my connections are or who I've influenced. I can talk about people who have said something or that stuck with me, and, and that kind of changed my perspective. And maybe I've said something at some point in time that stuck with a kid or a student or an athlete or one of my kids or something, that as we keep making those connections, it's just knowing that you're not alone, that you're in a community.
I'm glad you reminded me of what India used to say, and that, that's kind of how we hope that the programs at the ranch operate. And it's not even just about the people who get to come there. It's about what those people then go back and
Right.
who they are in their lives. What you're doing in your life and how you're changing and the perspective that you're gaining, that's overflowing to everybody that you come in contact with. And then those people are overflowing into everybody that they come in contact with. And it's like just this idea that the things that we do matter. It's even the idea behind this podcast too, of the dandelion effect. It's just another way of saying that ripple effect, where something that we talk about today, maybe that lands with somebody that's listening and they get a new perspective, right. Just like Howard's words, stuck with you, or some of your mom's words stuck with a lot of people that you've heard from. And then they carry that on and they get to change other people. And when you start to think about life that way, I think there's a lot of really interesting meaning behind living.
I will get back there someday. I don't know when, but I hope to get back there someday and maybe bring family, at least my wife. I don't know where my kids will be at that point, but I will cherish that 5 weeks that I spent there. It'll be a big part of who I am. Thanks to everybody there. Can't wait till I see you again sometime.
Tim Sloffer, isn't he just the epitome of a wholesome Midwest guy? Tim's story is both inspiring and heartwarming, and I appreciate his candor about life and learning. Having him at the ranch last summer was so fun, and he's right. By the end, he was part of the core crew, eating dinners with staff and going on ride-alongs with the chef to pick up supplies and produce. I find Tim's humor and outlook on life to be pleasantly contagious, and it's nearly impossible not to feel uplifted and lighter after talking with him. One of my favorite stories was him getting through the call and response chanting during Nat Kendall's Bhakti Yoga retreat, especially after admitting that it was the week that he was most hesitant about because he didn't know anything about Bhakti Yoga or devotional chanting and singing. He got out of his comfort zone, he embraced the unknown, and it turns out it was one of the highlights of his whole Montana adventure. There's a life lesson in there for sure. To learn more about the Lilly Teacher Creativity Grant, visit lillyendowment.org. And if you enjoyed this episode, you may also like to hear from Dr. Joseph Lamb, who was one of the teachers and doctors that Tim learned from during his time at the ranch. His episode, titled The Role of Spirit in Functional Medicine, is episode number 11, and you can find it in the Dandelion Effect podcast archives on any podcast listening platform. A special thank you to Matthew Marsalic and the Drum Brothers, whose music you hear at the beginning and the end of this podcast, as well as Dr. Jean Shinoda-Bolin, who first turned us on to the phenomenon of the Dandelion Effect and how ideas move through the world. This podcast is a production of the Feather Pipe Foundation, a 501c3 dedicated to healing, education, community, and empowerment. Please donate to this project by visiting featheredpipe.com/gratitude and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Be sure to tune in to our next episode in 2 weeks. It will be our last episode of season 2. I can't wait to share it with you. Until then, have a beautiful day.